Hi, welcome back. I've been wanting to do this video for a long time, but it requires me to put some real numbers on the table. And I think there's always a little vulnerability in that. But honestly, I think it's the most useful thing that I could do for this channel because when I was starting Fur Elise, I remember watching founder content and a lot of it was really vague in terms of what the costs actually were. And not a lot of people talk about what sourcing looks like, juggling a full-time job, and trying to launch something from scratch. So today I'm going to show you what worked, what didn't, and what I would do differently. The quick version is I spent roughly $28,000 getting Fur Elise off the ground. And in my first full year of selling, from August 2023 through July 2024, I made a little over $27,000 in revenue. So nearly break even in year one of a physical product brand that I built from scratch while working full time. So I'm quite proud of that, but it did come with some hard lessons that I think are worth sharing in detail. So let's get into it. It's late 2022. I'm a full-time consumer insights manager at a major automotive company. I do also have an MBA, and I think that's actually a big part of why I had the confidence to pursue this in the first place. Not because business school teaches you how to source, it doesn't, but it gave me a real foundation in how to analyze a business, how to think about pricing and margins, how to build a financial model. So I went in knowing how to run the numbers. I knew what questions to ask, but what I didn't have was real hands-on experience with physical products. And that gap between knowing something in theory and actually executing it is where most of my expensive lessons came from, which is part of what makes it all worth talking about. So in late 2022, I'm on Alibaba. It's like right before New Year's, messaging suppliers, trying to understand how sourcing actually works at the small brand level. And the first thing I learned is that before you place any real order, you have to sample. And not to say that you have to, no one's forcing you to, but it's definitely necessary. And so even knowing what I knew, this is where theory and reality start to diverge because sampling isn't just ordering one cute product to look at. You're comparing multiple suppliers simultaneously, evaluating the quality, the materials, the construction, the color accuracy against your specs. It's a real evaluation process and it costs real money. The sample itself, plus international shipping across however many manufacturers you're vetting at once. So by the end of 2022, before Fur Elise had a website, an Instagram, a single customer, I had spent about $580 just in sample orders, and then another $900 in January. And that's just the cost of figuring out whether this business was even viable. I also want to mention something I considered at the stage using the samples to take pre-orders before committing to a full production run. It's a smart concept in theory. You validate demand before you spend the big money. But for me, it had two problems. One, the samples weren't perfect yet, and I was still iterating on things, and I wasn't willing to show a customer something and then send them something slightly different. For a brand positioning itself at the premium end, that gap between what someone sees and what they receive matters. And two, the lead time from sample to finished product is long, and we're talking months. So asking a customer to pay that upfront and then wait that long for a product that they've never heard, especially for a brand that nobody had heard of yet, felt like too big of an ask. So I made the call to wait until the product was right and the inventory was in hand before putting it in front of anyone, which meant betting on myself before I had any external validation. February 2023, this is where the real money starts moving. And I want to say something about how I was thinking about this because I think that the mental framing actually matters. When you place a production order, you're not spending money you're converting cash into inventory, which is an asset. And it doesn't become a cost until that unit sells. That distinction is really important for how you read your financial position in year one, and I'll come back to that. So the first production orders were the plush toys, and I started here intentionally because the plush toys, they are the heart of Fur Elise. Coco, Ruby, Ella, Vixie, Iris. These are the products that people come back for. They buy as gifts. They tag us in their posts. And from the beginning, I had real conviction in them, not just because I love them, but because I understood the consumer behavior behind them. Gifting in the pet space is massive. Beautifully designed products in the premium tier, that was a genuine gap in the market, and I had done that homework. So I placed the first plush toy orders, 300 units of 2 styles from one supplier, 300 units of another style from a second supplier. So just on plush toys, just in February, I had spent over $5,000, and those units were just sitting in a factory being made. I have a bank confirmation and an Alibaba thread with people I've never met in person. And that's the reality of this model. I remember sitting with that for a minute, not panicking, more like the feeling of having made a considered bet and now you just wait. I've done the analysis. I believed in the product. The question was whether the market would agree. And it did. And I'll get to that. So also in February was packaging. Tissue paper and logo stickers. That cost me over $800. And this sounds like a small detail, but I actually think about packaging as a brand decision, not just a logistics one. For a luxury product, how something arrives is part of what you're selling. If someone spends $30 on a dog collar and it shows up in a plain poly mailer, there's a disconnect. The packaging has to match the price point. And that's not just aesthetics. It affects whether people feel good about what they bought, whether they'll share it, and whether they will come back. And then in March, it was the walk sets. So harness, collar, leash, poo pouch, the core functional line. And this is where I need to explain something called minimum order quantity, because it's genuinely one of the most important things to understand about building a physical product brand. So MOQ is the floor a manufacturer will produce for you. For custom products in custom colors and sizes, most factories won't go below 50 to 100 units per variation. By variation, I mean per color, per size, each counted separately. I was launching in 4 colors and 3 sizes at first. Do that math and you're talking hundreds of units minimum just to offer the full range, and before you even sold a single one. So add international freight and platform fees on top of that, and one category order gets large fast. So the full walk set order came to $7,600. And I want to be clear, I knew my retail price and I calculated my break even. So the math worked if the sell through was there. What a model can't tell you, though, is how long that sell through will take. And that's where patience and cash management becomes the real skill. So over those first few months, between the plush toys, the walk sets, the hats, candles, tennis balls, belt bags, and packaging, I had placed about $20,000 in production orders with a store that had barely launched. And I want to talk about the costs that live outside your product orders, because even when you've thought carefully about manufacturing, there are whole categories of expenses that are easy to miss. The big one that surprised me the most was how quickly freight added up across multiple shipments from multiple suppliers. And some orders had shipping adding 15 to 20% on top of the unit cost. And that's a meaningful difference. It means your pricing has to be built on what something actually costs you to get to your door, not just what the factory quoted you. And those are 2 very different numbers. Then there are the platform fees, the transaction fees, freight forwarder fees. They show up on every order and they add up. So business filings, your tools and software stack, domestic packaging materials. I didn't order all of my packaging materials from overseas because with the high MOQ, I wasn't sure if I wanted to stick with the packaging design. I'm a bit fickle in that way. So some of it was domestically sourced. And by the end of year one, the operational overhead alone had cost me almost $4,800. Okay, so total to launch Fur Elise, everything was roughly $28,000. The first full year revenue was a little over $27,000. And I want to be clear about something. A lot of the inventory I bought hadn't sold yet by the end of year one. It was still sitting in stock and it's still an asset and it's still generating sales into year two. So the real cost of what actually left my hands and became sales was meaningfully lower than $28,000, which means that the business was already profitable on the inventory that moved. And beyond the numbers, I had built something real, a community, real customers who cared about the brand. And we started getting opportunities coming to us, including from some pretty major publications, which I'll be honest too, because I think people assume press like that is purely earned. But for us, it was a paid placement. So Condé Nast came to us with opportunities to be featured across consecutive issues. And I said yes multiple times because we needed to establish credibility and get some publications under our belts early on. So that's a real marketing expense. And in hindsight, I probably would have been a bit more selective and passed on a couple that didn't directly align with our target audience. But I do believe we were offered it in the first place because of our brand awareness and social proof. Whether every decision was worth the cost is something that I'm still thinking through. So let me talk about what worked and what didn't, and specifically why, because the reasons matter more than just the outcome. So the plush toys worked immediately, best sell-through of anything we launched, and the consumer research held up. People responded exactly the way that I expected, which was validating, not just commercially, but as a reminder that doing the homework up front actually pays off. And the walk suits were solid too, harnesses and leashes especially. So that big March bet did pay off. Then there are the harder ones. So the candles. This one stings a little. When the production order arrived, the quality was completely different from the samples that I had approved, noticeably, like materially different. And I was new to the operational side of this, so I didn't move fast enough and I waited too long to do a proper inspection. And by the time I had documented everything, the window to dispute it with the supplier had closed. So what followed was expensive. I put significant additional money into trying to salvage the formula, reformulating it, remaking it, and the answer has been no. I'm not an expert on candles, to be honest, but I think a big part of it is that the wax they used in the original run compromised things in a way that is really hard to undo. So the lesson I'll never forget is open your boxes immediately when they arrive, even if it's a lot. Check every unit against your approved sample, document everything, and know your dispute window before you place the order, because I knew the theory, I didn't execute it, and it cost me. The next thing is the paw cream and the pet wash. That's a completely different story because these are products that I'm genuinely proud of. The formula is excellent. The quality is exactly what I wanted. And every customer who's tried them loves them. The challenge is they're newer to the line and I haven't had the bandwidth to give them the attention that they deserve. But the margins are strong and the product is right. So it's a focus problem, not a product problem. And knowing which one you're dealing with matters because they require completely different responses. Okay, so what I would do differently. I would launch with fewer products. I launched with over 20 and I understand why. I wanted the brand to feel complete, cohesive, and I wanted the full vision to be visible. But the financial reality is that more products means more minimum order commitments, more supplier relationships, more things to photograph and market and track. And it's a lot to carry, especially alongside a full-time job. So the smarter move would have been to start concentrated, your highest conviction products, prove the demand, and then expand from a position of knowledge instead of hope. And then if I were starting again, I would launch with probably 5 products. So the core walk set and maybe 2 or 3 plushies. Everything else comes after the data tells you what the customer actually wants. And then I would also do the full cost math before placing any order. And I did do this to the best of my ability. But yeah, just to touch on that again, the real cost per unit isn't the factory quote. It's factory cost plus freight plus fees plus packaging. And that's what the product actually costs you. So your margin is what's left after that. And after getting it to your customer, your break even is how many units you need to sell to cover your total investment. Those numbers need to exist before you send any money, not after the boxes are already in your living room or your basement. So try to have a pretty clear budget before you go into it. And finally, I know the difference between a product problem and a business problem. So the candles were a supplier failure. The Paul cream and the Pat wash are a bandwidth and focus issue with a clear path forward. How you respond to each is completely different. And if you misdiagnose which one you're dealing with, you end up solving the wrong thing, which is its own kind of expensive. Okay, so that's year 1. If you're building something physical and the early numbers feel really heavy, that's normal. What matters is whether you understand your costs, whether your inventory is moving, and whether you're building something people genuinely care about, if it resonates with them. And if those things are true, then you're on the right track. So drop your questions in the comments. I would love to know what you're working on. And please subscribe if you're interested in following our journey. I've got a lot of topics that I want to share with you guys. So I hope that you enjoyed this and talk soon. Bye. One more thing before we end off, I forgot to mention, I've been really into Claude lately, so I wanted to include a Claude prompt for you guys. I'll leave it in the comments or in the description, but you can copy and paste the prompt directly into Claude, and it'll walk you through building your own financial tracker similar to the one that I use for Fur Elise. And it'll ask you for your own numbers and build you a clean visual spreadsheet that you can actually use. I'm hoping that this will help you guys. It's at no cost whatsoever. It'll only take about 5 minutes and it's yours. So I'll put the link and the prompt in the description. Thank you guys and hope you enjoyed this. I will try to be better about posting more consistently, but as always, appreciate you tuning in. Thanks. Bye.